Welcome. Today we're going to start talking about about life, and we're going to talk about some developments on how some scientists and churches viewed life to come about. Then we're going to have a look at some scientists who tested their hypotheses about how life began, and they either proved or disputed those hypotheses. So to begin, spontaneous generation is a belief that organic matter could produce life. And for many, many centuries, people believed that life just existed because of organic matter. The idea of spontaneous generation complemented a lot of religious views on how God created the universe. And many scientists tried to prove this. So in order to prove this, one example is in order to create mice, all you needed to do to make a mouse was to put out some dirty laundry, add some wheat or grain or corn kernels to it, mix it all up, let it sit outside for 21 days. And then after those 21 days or those 3 weeks, you're going to have mice. Now, the reason for getting the mice might seem obvious to us, but hundreds of years ago, it didn't seem obvious. It didn't seem obvious that if you just set out dirty laundry and put wheat in there, that you're not going to attract mice. Why they didn't check it before 21 days, I don't know. But they just said 21 days, you're going to make a mouse. Another experiment that was done was to create maggots. All you needed to do to get maggots was to leave out meat. And a few days later, you're going to have maggots. They just spontaneously generated. So you just needed meat. You're going to get maggots. One of the scientists, or the first scientist we're going to start talking about, is Francesco Redi, and he was around in about 1668. So it's really important that you know the name of the scientist, about the time frame that the scientist was around, and the experiment that was the scientists did, the hypothesis that they proved or stated, and whether their hypothesis was agreed upon or proved to be correct, or whether it was proven to be false by another scientist. So again, the scientist, the year, the experiment and or hypothesis, and whether it was proven true or proven false. If it was proven false, who proved it? So Francesco Redi, 1668, he wanted to prove that spontaneous generation did not occur. And this is how he disproved it. He took 3 flasks and he put pieces of meat in each flask. So in the first flask, he put a piece of meat and left it uncovered. The second flask, he put in a piece of meat and he sealed it with a cork. And the third flask, he put in a piece of meat. He sealed it or covered it with gauze and just something in order to keep the gauze on, so like an elastic band or tape. And what he found was that the flask that was unsealed, yes, there were maggots. And he said that the maggots were there because flies could get on the meat and they can land and lay eggs, and the eggs turn into maggots. The flask that was sealed showed no growth at all of maggots, so no spontaneous generation. And the third flask, the one that was covered with the gauze, there were flies attracted to this flask very much. And they were laying eggs and maggots were appearing, but they were not appearing on the meat. They were appearing up on the gauze. So his experiment was able to disprove spontaneous generation. If it had proven spontaneous generation, we would have actually seen maggots forming on the 2 pieces of meat that were covered. And we didn't.
Prior to Charles Darwin,